All right, parents, welcome back to another conversation starter. Pastor Mario.
Dawson, the youth leader.
We're getting good at this.
Yes,
you
we
guys
are.
know it. And if you haven't been keeping up with these, I hope you are. But if you haven't, we're going through a month of testimony. Last week I did mine. This past Sunday, Phil, your dad,
One of the elders.
one of the elders of the church, came in and gave his testimony to the kids, and it was powerful.
Yes, very powerful. He's very emotional, so the first one to cry during their testimony, but not surprising. He's my dad. I know how emotional he is.
I think it's really cool though, because Jordan and I were having a conversation about this at Poncho's, and she was like, I think it's good that the kids see leaders and like pastors and elders show emotion when they talk about these things. Because,
definitely.
It kind of breaks down the walls of like, oh, do they feel?
Yeah.
Do they feel things?
More humanity.
Yeah. And so I thought that was great about your dad, is that this was very close and dear to his heart. And so when he was communicating it with the students, I thought it was just very genuine and from a place of just from the heart.
Yeah.
So I thought it was great. And you could feel in the room, like, that things were, it was hitting the students.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love that, like, whenever you just feel that. And like, okay, they're like paying attention.
Yeah.
They're listening.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So it was great. And I guess I could summarize Phil's testimony with the word transformation.
Yeah.
He talked a lot about, that he grew up going to church and stuff, which is great because that was also Sam's testimony.
Right.
Grew up going to church. My dad was a pastor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Phil was able to say, like, but I have seen, like, transformation.
Yeah.
Even though I've grown up in the church.
Yeah.
In himself, but also in his dad.
Yeah, in my pop.
Your pop.
Yeah. And it's a very central theme that he experienced. Again, because similar to even my own story, like growing up in church, we almost assume we don't have a testimony. And so like a huge part of my dad's testimony is not him going through terrible times, but actually seeing my pop go through things that transformed him. And so it just goes to show as well that sometimes it's even a story that you experience secondhand that can be a powerful testimony as well. Because again, like my pop was in a plane crash and he had to sit in a chair for 8 weeks, and he decided to read the Bible, and it changed him. He was a completely different man afterwards. Like my dad wasn't the one in the plane crash. My dad wasn't the one who changed, but he got to witness it. Yeah. And then he got to testify to it all these years later. And it really is a beautiful thing where he saw, like he's talking more about what he saw than what he experienced. And that's really cool for these, the students might not have that massive experience yet, but we've all seen things that we can talk about God's faithfulness with and God changing people, so.
Yeah, and I think even like how you're saying, like it was almost like Phil was witnessing God. No, it really was. It's not even like, it seems like Phil was watching God change his dad right before his eyes. And I just think and that's exactly how he said it too. Yeah. And I just think that's so powerful, because even that alone can grow your faith. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, I may not be experiencing that firsthand, but to see up close and personal someone literally being transformed from one person to another person of character and whatever, is like, it just testifies that God really does do this. It's not just a story or what we read in Genesis, like what we've been going through and stuff. Like, it happens in real time.
It's wild to me, because I knew Pop for 13 years, and I only knew kind of like the new Pop as my, like I didn't know, like my dad would tell stories about his childhood, and it almost didn't match up, because I was like, that's not how Pop acts, like he's different than that.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool because then like I didn't witness that transformation, but I was on the kind of second half of it where he was a different person and I got to experience the person that God turned him into.
Man, that's
instead of meeting, you know, the kind of mean, harder version of him that was before, you know.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So I just think, yeah, again, like it's, you know, with these, you know, in this series with these conversation starters, we're not trying to give you like 3 questions to engage with your students, you know, pretty much just sticking to one main thing, which this week is centered on transformation.
Yeah, and we're still trying to, again, last week we were trying to help them build their own testimonies. That continues. Like, it's not our specific topic this week, but that's still the goal.
Still continue that.
Is to help them form that, like, story and find God through their own story. And so using that and using kind of the themes we've seen, we can then build it out even more. So if you still have your 3-column thing, you can bring it back out again and have them go through it again.
Bring it back out if you haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
8 by 10 regular piece of paper, landscape, split it into 3 columns, before, the moment, after. Boom, you're set up.
And you're all set up.
You're good, and you can outline your testimony.
Yeah. And you can even do it with the specific theme in mind of like, okay, I'm gonna look for transformation in my testimony.
Yeah.
And so I guess the question this week, there's a reading that goes with it. I feel like we haven't been doing as many readings since we're not going through a chapter every week.
Not too many, so today's pretty good.
Yeah, so you can read Romans 12:2. If you want, you can read all of Romans 12 if you're feeling extra, you know, like you want some extra Bible time. But just read Romans 12:2 is the verse we're focusing on. And then ask your student, again with the testimony mindset, have you seen any transformation in your own testimony? Whether it's yourself, whether it's someone you know, whether it's even just kind of like a story you've heard, but it like you got to experience the transformation, the other half of it. Ask them that. And of course, as with every question, answer it yourself too, as the parent. Tell them about any transformation you've seen, how it's affected you, you know, even if you were the one who transformed, how that affected you. And then help them to kind of, again, whether you write it out or whether you just talk through it, help them to spot it in their own story.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the word transformation may sound like a kind of maybe intimidating word, because even just before this, like you said, I was like, to share, I was like, okay, let me ask Siri, define transformation. And I was hoping that it was going to be like an amazing moment that is clearly defined as different in your life, or something like that. And it was just said, a change. Just a change. And it just reminded me, it's like, it's simple. You know, don't like, you know, when your student is looking through their testimony or their life and looking for these moments, you know, they don't have to be intimidated of like, okay, well, I never did anything super crazy and now I don't, or like my parents never did anything super crazy and now I don't. It can be very small but clear changes. Dad used to say this, he doesn't anymore. We didn't used to do this, we do now. You know, those are transformations. Those are different ways that you think. And never let your student downplay anything they've witnessed. You, like, again, don't let them try and scale it like, you know, Dad, what the heck, you weren't in a plane accident. You know, like, how dare you?
Like,
why not?
Like, you can help them to still spot those you know, those little changes. You know, sometimes you're stubborn about something and God softens your heart and then you're not stubborn about it anymore.
Boom, transformation.
You know, like, you know, sometimes you don't believe someone on something and then you witness it yourself and then you do believe them. Transformation, you know, like sometimes you spend years sitting in the back of the church, not caring about church, and then all of a sudden you end up at the front of the church, you know, or you end up, you know, just in fellowship every week, you're at the Bible, you know, like these mini transformations that lead to a big transformation, like help them to spot all of it, all different shapes and sizes, so that they know, okay, this transformation I went through, even though it wasn't, you know, huge, it took me from this path to this slightly different path that I'm now on, you know?
Yep. Oh, yeah. And I think that's wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be able to notice, like, okay, this was a transformation. It wasn't this big, grand thing. This was a transformation, was a change.
This was a point of change.
This was a point of change. And so the flip side of that, if you are engaging with your student, you're trying to work through it, and you're sharing, you know, this is what I've seen, this is what happened in my life, and they're like, you know, I just haven't seen much change, actually. And they're honest with you like that, you know, lean into that and ask them, well, do you believe that you could see that? Do you believe, like, that you can change in this respect? Because I think a very real thing is sometimes we think, like, we cannot be changed. Like, sometimes we think, like, this is just the way that I think, this is just the way that I do things. I read what it says in the Bible that God can but I'm not seeing it, so I just don't believe that it can happen. You know? Or maybe you're stuck in a sin, and it's like, okay, I just don't believe that I can be changed. And so that might be another flip side to it of like, okay, well, if you don't believe that you could be changed, let's dive into that a little bit more. Rather than trying to look for specifics.
And it can be a big deal for things like evangelism as well, because if we go into evangelism without the belief that that the gospel can change people, or that more specifically God can change people, like even if we haven't seen it, we still need to believe it. Because if we go into that situation not believing God can change this person, we're not going to see the purpose behind sharing with them, because we'll be like, well, they'll just swat it away. But if we go into it fully being like, God can change this person, then you have infinite reason to share the gospel with them, because you could be the one that God uses to change that person. You know, it could be your sharing that God uses. And so, and again, don't be like, why haven't you seen any change? Because they're not going to have a response to that. You know?
It can be very intimidating if they don't, and you're like, well, why not? You've been doing this, and you've been going to church and youth group. Well, why haven't you changed? It's like, okay.
Instead, just have that open conversation about like, do you believe God can change people?
Do you believe it?
They'll see it at some point in their life, especially if they're looking for it. If they believe it, then they'll be looking for it, at least more than if they don't believe it. You know?
Yeah, I think that's good. That's wise. So, let that be an encouragement to you guys. If you want more information on how to actually make the testimony sheet, just watch last week's conversation starter. We kind of talk about that a little bit more in that. But yeah, like Dawson said, read Romans chapter 12, verse 2, or the whole chapter, but specifically verse 2, because transformation is a key thing in that verse. And it'll give a lot of context to the question that you ask them. And so we hope that, you know, this leads to some transforming. Or transformative. Transforming conversation. It doesn't matter.
We'll fix it.
I screwed it up.
We'll fix it in post.
I was trying to make a pun, but it didn't work out. Jordan's better at that than me. But anyways, hope you guys have a good one. Enjoy your week. We pray that you have just a blessed week. Next week, Mark Wesseling, one of our other youth leaders, is giving his testimony. He will be the last testimony of the month. And so tell your kids to be here, because it'd be great.
It's going to be a good week.
It's going to be a wild one. All right, man. See you guys later.
Bye.
Hello, parents. This is Pastor Mario. Thank you guys for joining us for this week's conversation starter. If you want more ways that you can engage with your youth, you can check out the other conversation starters here on my side. Thank you guys for joining us. Hope you guys are doing well.